chosen vessel. Every near miss you have ever survived was not luck. It was not coincidence. It was not the universe randomly deciding to spare you while harming someone else. That car that stopped inches away from yours. That sickness that the doctors expected to worsen, but that quietly reversed course. That betrayal that was set in motion against you, but collapsed before it could reach its full destructive potential. That night when something dark was headed directly toward your family, and it changed direction at the last possible moment, for reasons no one around you could logically explain. You have been collecting these moments your entire life without fully understanding what they meant. You filed them under fortunate timing, under good luck, under things that just happen sometimes. But I am here to tell you that none of those moments were random, and I can prove it, because the same hand that turned each of those situations was mine, and the same shield that blocked each of those attacks is still standing over your life right now, as strong and as active as it has ever been. There is a covering over your life. It is not made of anything this world manufactures. It cannot be purchased at any price, built by any human hand, or forged through any effort of your own strength. It is my covering, ancient and eternal, woven from my own glory, reinforced by my own authority, and secured by a love so vast that nothing in all of creation has the power to tear it apart. When the adversary looked at your life and calculated his strategy against you, he did not account for one essential reality, that I would stand in the gap, that between him and you there would be an impenetrable barrier, not a thin veil, not a temporary shield, but a wall of fire that no darkness can breach, no weapon can pierce, no scheme can circumvent. You have been living under this covering longer than you realize. Think back, not to this recent season alone, but to the whole arc of your life. Think about the moments when something was headed toward you, and it veered away unexpectedly, as though redirected by an invisible hand at the last possible moment. Think about the accidents that almost happened, the ones where the sequence of events was so close to catastrophe that you felt the cold wind of it passing by without touching you. The betrayals that were stopped before they reached full force, the sicknesses that were turned back before they could take root in your body and establish themselves as permanent. The plans the adversary laid carefully against your finances, your relationships, your family plans, that somehow fell apart for no logical reason you could fully explain to someone else. When people asked you how things worked out, you found yourself reaching for a word like fortunate or lucky, because you did not have a natural language adequate to describe what had actually happened. That was not coincidence. That was not luck. That was the shield. That was me, actively working on your behalf, interposing my authority between you and the harm that was designed for your destruction. The evidence of my protection is written in the story of your life, in places you have probably forgotten, moments you moved past without fully examining what occurred there and what did not occur there. Every near miss, every unexpected turn, every time the thing that should have broken you somehow did not. These are the fingerprints of the one who stands over you. I want you to understand the architecture of this protection I have built around your life, because understanding it will change the way you stand. It will change the way you face what comes at you. It will transform the posture of your spirit from one of anxious vigilance to one of settled, unshakable confidence. Confidence is not the absence of awareness that threats exist. Confidence is the knowledge of what stands between you and every threat that exists. And that knowledge changes everything about how you walk through the world. Consider what it means that I am your fortress. When an ancient city was under threat of attack, a fortress was not merely a structure of stone and mortar. It was a statement of power. It was the declaration visible to every approaching force that those inside were covered by an authority greater than the one attacking. The walls did not merely provide a physical barrier. They announced to every hostile army on the horizon that what was inside had a defender, that the attack would not go unchallenged, that the force required to breach those walls was greater than anything the enemy currently possessed. That is what my presence around your life declares. You are not standing exposed in an open field with nothing between you and everything that threatens you, have been brought inside the strongest fortress that has ever existed, one whose walls have never been breached, whose gates have never been forced open by any power that tested them, whose foundation has never cracked under any assault. In all of eternity, every power that has ever come against this fortress has turned back defeated, not because the attacks were weak, but because the fortress is unconquerable. The helmet of salvation that I placed upon your mind is not symbolic decoration. It is not a ceremonial piece worn only during formal religious moments. It is active living protection for your thoughts, for your reasoning, your sense of identity, your understanding of who you are and whose you are. The adversary understands with terrible precision that the mind is the primary battleground. He knows that if he can capture your thoughts, if he can fill the space of your mind with fear, with doubt, here are the words you need to say. Because you did not have a natural language adequate to describe what had actually happened. That was not coincidence. That was not luck. That was the shield. That was me actively working on your behalf, interposing my authority between you and the harm that was designed for your destruction. The evidence of my protection is written in the story of your life, in places you have probably forgotten, moments you moved past, without fully examining what occurred there and what did not occur there. Every near miss, every unexpected turn, every time the thing that should have broken you somehow did not. These are the fingerprints of the one who stands over you. I want you to understand the architecture of this protection I have built around your life, because understanding it will change the way you stand. It will change the way you face what comes at you. It will transform the posture of your spirit from one of anxious vigilance to one of settled, unshakable confidence. Confidence is not the absence of awareness that threats exist. Confidence is the knowledge of what stands between you and every threat that exists. And that knowledge changes everything about how you walk through the world. Consider what it means that I am your fortress. When an ancient city was under threat of attack, a fortress was not merely a structure of stone and mortar. It was a statement of power. It was the declaration visible to every approaching force that those inside were covered by an authority greater than the one attacking. The walls did not merely provide a physical barrier. They announced to every hostile army on the horizon that what was inside had a defender, that the attack would not go unchallenged, that the force required to breach those walls was greater than anything the enemy currently possessed. That is what my presence around your life declares. You are not standing exposed in an open field with nothing between you and everything that threatens you. You have been brought inside the strongest fortress that has ever existed, one whose walls have never been breached, whose gates have never been forced open by any power that tested them, whose foundation has never cracked under any assault in all of eternity. Every power that has ever come against this fortress has turned back defeated, not because the attacks were weak, but because the fortress is unconquerable. The helmet of salvation that I placed upon your mind is not symbolic decoration. It is not a ceremonial piece worn only during formal religious moments. It is active, living protection for your thoughts, for your reasoning, your sense of identity, your understanding of who you are and whose you are. The adversary understands with terrible precision that the mind is the primary battleground. He knows that if he can capture your thoughts, if he can fill the space of your mind with fear, with doubt, with a distorted and darkened picture of your circumstances, he can paralyze you from the inside without ever throwing a single visible blow from the outside. A person paralyzed by their own thoughts needs no external prison. The adversary has studied the architecture of the human mind for a very long time, and he knows exactly where to apply pressure to cause the most damage with the least visible effort. He whispers in the quiet spaces. He speaks when the noise of the day drops away, and you are left alone with your own thoughts. He suggests impossibilities, realities that he insists are inevitable outcomes. He presents as foregone conclusions. Futures he sketches in the darkest possible colors. He takes real difficulties and frames them in ways that make them look permanent, immovable, absolute. He frames your current situation in the darkest possible light, and then waits in silence, watching to see whether you will accept the picture he has painted as the full and accurate account of your reality. But the helmet I have given you covers the very places he targets. It guards the entryway of your thoughts, It filters what is allowed to pass through, and establish itself as settled belief in the interior of your mind. It provides a covering over your identity, so that when the adversary says you are forgotten, the truth of the helmet reminds you that you are deeply known. When he says you are abandoned, the covering tells you that you are held. When he says you are too broken to be used, too inconsistent to be trusted, too far from the version of yourself that could be chosen for something significant, the helmet declares over you that you are exactly the kind of person I have always reached toward. Not because of perfection, not because of an impressive spiritual record, but because of my grace, working through an available vessel who has not given up. Your heart has faced targeted attacks, not general unfocused pressure, targeted attacks aimed with deliberate precision at the center of who you are. I know this with complete clarity, not as a general observation about human experience, but as the one who has witnessed every strike that was aimed at the core of your personhood. The adversary has sent disappointments designed to do one specific thing: calcify your ability to hope. Repeated disappointment, when it arrives in a pattern, does something particular to the human heart. It convinces you that hope itself is the problem, that if you would just stop hoping, stop expecting, stop trusting, you would stop being hurt. And so the disappointments are not accidental. They are strategic. They are designed to close you off from the very posture of open-heartedness that allows my promises to land in your life. He has orchestrated relationship wounds with the same deliberate purpose: make you close yourself off from vulnerability, to withdraw into a self-protective distance that keeps you technically safe from being hurt again, but also prevents the depth of connection that is part of your design and your inheritance as my child. He has allowed repeated cycles of difficulty in specific areas of your life, the same area, cycling through what feels like the same pattern again and again, because he is trying to convince you that certain doors will always remain locked for you, that certain promises in Scripture were never really meant for you personally, that the breakthrough you have been trusting me for is a beautiful idea. You need to grieve and release. Every single one of those strategies has been aimed at the same target: your heart, and specifically your capacity to keep believing when believing requires sustained effort against sustained evidence to the contrary. This is why I gave you the breastplate of righteousness. Not righteousness that you manufactured through perfect behavior and consistent discipline and flawless daily decisions. My righteousness, the kind that was placed over your heart as a permanent covering, that has nothing to do with what you have done and everything to do with what I declared over you at the moment you came to me. That breastplate was not earned through performance, and it is not maintained through performance. It is not removed when you stumble. It does not develop rust or weakness when you fail to maintain your spiritual discipline at the level you wish you could sustain it. It was fastened over your heart by my own hands, and the adversary has absolutely no authority to pry it loose when he aims at your heart, when he fires arrows of shame over the things you have done that you cannot undo, arrows of unworthiness over the gap between who you are and who you think you should be, arrows that carry the memory of your most embarrassing failures and most regretted moments. They strike the breastplate and they fall to the ground. They do not reach what they were sent to destroy. Your heart is protected, not because you guarded it perfectly, but because I appointed myself as its guardian. The shield of faith that stands between you and the burning arrows of the adversary is not a static object. It is not a fixed wall that sits in one position while the attack comes from a single unchanging direction. It is active. It moves with you. It adjusts to every angle of attack, every shift in the adversary's strategy, every change in the direction from which the pressure is coming. When the enemy repositions and fires from a direction you were not expecting, when the attack comes not from obvious external pressure, but from subtle internal whispers that feel disturbingly like your own voice, or when it comes through circumstances that seem completely ordinary, but carry a discouraging weight, the shield adjusts. This is what living faith does. It is not a static belief parked in one corner of your mind that you retrieve occasionally for moments of religious engagement. It is a living, dynamic, responsive force that functions in real time against real opposition. Every time you choose to trust me in the face of evidence that seems to directly contradict my promises, that shield absorbs another arrow. Every time you refuse to let fear write the final sentence of your story, even when the evidence that fear presents to you is compelling, and the conclusion it draws seems logical, the shield grows stronger every time you say, even through tears, even through confusion, even through the exhaustion of a season that has lasted longer than you thought you could endure, I trust you. Something is happening in the spiritual architecture of your protection that the adversary cannot undo and cannot work around. Now I want to speak directly about the specific fear that has been following you. Not to amplify what it is trying to produce, but to expose its mechanism. Because fear only exercises real power when it operates in the dark spaces of the unexamined, when it circulates through your mind without being brought into the light, where its nature can be clearly seen. You have been afraid, not just vaguely, not just in a general way, but with a specific named fear, the kind that has a shape, a face, a particular scenario attached to it. The fear of a particular loss you do not feel equipped to survive. The fear of a specific category of failure that would confirm the worst things you privately believe about yourself. The fear attached to a situation that has hurt you before and that you are terrified will follow the same pattern and hurt you again. That fear has been active in the theater of your imagination. It has been showing you mental images, running detailed scenarios, rehearsing catastrophes with the specificity of a film director, presenting the worst possible version of outcomes with such vividness that your body sometimes responds as though the catastrophe has already occurred. And it has been doing all of this with one purpose: to achieve through imagination what the adversary could not achieve through direct assault. It wants to make you a prisoner of possibility, held captive not by something that has actually happened, but by something you are terrified might happen. Here is what you must understand about the fear that pursues you. It is operating entirely without my authorization. The spirit of fear is not something I dispatched into your life. I did not send it. I did not allow it to claim territory in your interior life. And I have not decided that it is a useful tool for your spiritual development that I will allow to remain. What I have given you is categorically different from what fear offers. I have given you power, the kind of power that comes from connection to the source of all authority. I have given you love, a love that displaces fear at its root, because perfect love does not coexist with the torment of fear, but casts it out. And I have given you a sound mind, clarity of thought, the ability to assess your situation accurately, rather than through the distorting lens of panic and worst-case projection. When fear comes knocking, and it will come because the adversary is persistent, and he has identified this particular avenue of access as one that has worked on you before, I need you to do something deliberate. Do not simply try to suppress the feeling. Do not white-knuckle your way through it with sheer willpower. Instead, do this. Remember the architecture. Remember that you are not a person standing in an open field with nothing between you and everything that threatens you. Remember the fortress. Remember the shield. Remember the one who went ahead of you into the very situation fear is showing you images of, and who is already there. Fear shows you the size of the threat. Remembering my presence shows you the size of what stands between you and the threat. Fear's entire power rests on a single lie, and once you see the lie clearly, the power begins to dissolve. The lie is this: that there exists some domain of your life, some category of threat, some situation sufficiently extreme or sufficiently specific that it finally falls outside the reach of my care and my coverage. Fear needs you to believe that your situation is the exception, the one case where my protection does not fully apply, where my promises have a clause that excludes your particular circumstance, where this shield has a gap that corresponds exactly to the arrow that has been prepared for you. That lie is the entire structural foundation of everything fear tries to build in your life, and I am dismantling that foundation today. There is no corner of your existence that falls outside my protection. None, not one. Not your physical body and its vulnerabilities, not your financial situation and its uncertainties, not your most complicated and painful relationships, not your private interior life with all its inconsistencies and unresolved questions, not your past with its failures and the lake consequences that still echo, not your future with its unknowns and its possibilities that cut in multiple directions. My protection is not partial, not selective, not conditional on your spiritual performance in any given period. It is comprehensive, active, absolute, in the sense that nothing formed against you shall prosper. And that word nothing carries no asterisk, no footnote, no clause that creates an exception for your particular situation. The walls I have built around your life extend in every direction and at every level. They extend forward into situations you have not yet entered, into the meeting you are anxious about, the conversation that needs to happen, the next chapter you are moving toward, whether you feel ready for it or not. Those walls are already positioned in the space you have not yet walked into. When a plan has been prepared against you, in a room you have not yet entered, my presence is already in that room. When a strategy against your family is being assembled somewhere outside your awareness, my authority is already standing between that strategy and its target. The advanced force of my kingdom is not slow. It does not wait until you have already absorbed the first wave of the attack before arriving to help. It goes before you, always, before you think about what it means specifically that I go before you, as a wall of fire. Fire is not merely a barrier. Fire transforms it, does not only stop what is coming, it consumes the fuel of the attack before that fuel can be used against you. The fire of my presence around your life is not decorative, not symbolic, not limited to spiritual spaces that feel obviously sacred. It is active wherever you are, and it is purifying every plan laid against you. That encounters my fire is not simply deflected at the border. It is dismantled. The strategy unravels from the inside. The weapon fails at the moment it was meant to be raised. The scheme that looked carefully constructed and apparently airtight collapses before execution, and neither you nor the one who assembled it can fully explain why. This is not because of your cleverness or your spiritual skill, or your ability to discern and counteract what was coming. It is because of the nature of what surrounds you, by virtue of whose you are. Your family inhabits this covering with you. The protection I have placed over your individual life does not stop at the boundary of your personal existence and leave those you love unguarded in the open. It extends outward from where you stand, flowing along the lines of love and covenant and persistent intercession that connect you to the people who matter most to you. The adversary understands your deepest vulnerabilities, and he has learned that attacking the people closest to you is often more effective than attacking you. You directly, King, knows that a parent's pain over a child surpasses almost any personal pain. He knows that watching someone you love suffer can hollow you out in ways that direct suffering cannot. He has mapped the territory of what you treasure. But my covering moves with remarkable comprehensiveness. The prayers you have prayed for your children, said in the quiet of your own heart, when no one heard you but me, have not evaporated. They have accumulated layer upon layer, building a spiritual covering over the lives of those you have interceded for, that cannot be pulled down by the adversary's efforts. The walls around your family are real. They were not constructed by the intensity of your emotion or the eloquence of your words, but by my sovereign response to your persistent trust. When you have prayed for a child who is walking in a difficult direction, when you have asked me to protect a spouse, or a parent, or a sibling whose situation concerns you deeply, when you have lifted to me the name of someone whose path makes you lie awake, those prayers became bricks in a wall that surrounds the person you prayed for. Your home is consecrated ground. This is not poetry. It is spiritual reality. The place where you live, where you rest, where your family comes together, where you have at various times prayed and wept and believed and sought my face. That space has been altered by my presence, responding to your invitation. There is a measurable spiritual difference between a place where my name has been consistently spoken in faith and a place where it has not. You have called on my name within those walls. You have asked for my presence to fill that space, and I have responded to that invitation in ways that have changed the spiritual climate of your home, in ways that persist, whether or not you feel them in any given moment. Consecrated territory is not neutral ground. The adversary does not have free rein in a place that has been set apart for me, covered by my blood and my name, filled with the prayers of someone who belongs to me. The work your hands do is also under my care. your livelihood, the means by which you provide for yourself and for those who depend on your provision. This is not outside the scope of what I concern myself with. I know what the adversary has targeted in the area of your finances and your professional life because I know what he understands about the particular corrosive effect of sustained material pressure. It is a specific kind of anxiety that erodes peace gradually, that makes prayer feel difficult, that makes the distance between your current situation and the promises of provision feel impossibly wide. It is not dramatic suffering, it is the slow grinding of ongoing uncertainty, and he uses it strategically because it is so effective at distracting your attention and depleting your spiritual energy over time. My provision has a different logic than the logic of the material world. It does not follow the rules that govern scarce resources distributed among competing needs. It operates according to the principles of a kingdom whose source of supply is unlimited, whose storehouse is never empty, and whose distribution is guided by a wisdom that knows exactly what you need and exactly when you need it. My provision has followed you through your entire life, including the seasons when you did not recognize it as such. The unexpected supply that arrived when the numbers did not work. The favor extended in professional spaces where you had no logical reason to expect it. The open door that appeared just as another one closed, with a timing so precise that only in retrospect could you see the design behind it. When you step forward in your work, when you show up with integrity, when you serve with genuine care, when you apply yourself to what is before you, with the understanding that I am your ultimate employer and that your work is an act of stewardship, my favor moves ahead of your effort, not in ways that bypass your need to work faithfully, but in ways that multiply the fruit of that faithful work beyond what your effort alone could produce. Doors open for someone who walks under my covering that would remain closed to the same person operating under their own authority alone. Relationships develop differently. Opportunities arise from directions that could not have been predicted. This is the consistent, quiet, powerful way my favor operates in the life of someone who walks in alignment with me. Let me speak now about what has been happening in this particular season. Not about protection in the abstract, but about the specific pattern of pressure you have been navigating. Because you are not imagining it. There has been a clustering of difficulties that goes beyond random circumstance. Things that are difficult have been arriving, not one at a time, in a manageable sequence, but in combination. Multiple areas of your life pressing simultaneously, in a way that has made the overall weight feel exponentially greater than any individual piece would have been. Relational strain coinciding with financial concern. Physical tiredness coinciding with spiritual dryness. A sense of being behind, of not keeping up, of falling short in too many areas at once to attend to any of them adequately. The pattern you have noticed is real. The adversary has been deliberate, and the reason the intensity has increased rather than decreased in this period is something I need you to hear clearly. He is running out of runway. There is something in your near future, a transition, a breakthrough, a fulfillment of something I promised you that has. I'm here to support you in understanding the text. Please let me know what you'd like to discuss, or if there's something specific you're seeking. Been building quietly for a long time, that he can perceive from his vantage point, and that he is desperately trying to prevent delay or derail increased aggression from the adversary, is almost always evidence of proximity to breakthrough. He does not invest concentrated, coordinated effort in lives where nothing significant is approaching. The very specificity and intensity of the pressure in this season is telling you something important about what is directly ahead of you. What he cannot factor into his calculations is the spiritual dynamic that sustained pressure creates. It drives you toward me. Every time he turns up the heat, he is creating conditions in which your tendency is to seek my face with an urgency you would never summon in comfortable seasons. The deep seeking that happens in desperate seasons produces a quality of knowing me, of experiencing my presence and faithfulness that simply does not develop in easy times. Comfort produces gratitude, desperation produces intimacy. And intimacy with me is the one thing the adversary cannot afford to facilitate, because it produces a depth of trust and a quality of spiritual sight that makes people increasingly difficult to deceive and increasingly resistant to the tactics that have worked on them before. Every battle he brings to your door that drives you deeper into my presence is a battle he has ultimately lost, regardless of how it appears in its opening stages. You may win a moment, gain a foothold in a specific situation, cause real and painful disruption in real areas of your life. I am not dismissing the reality of what you have been walking through, but the ultimate trajectory of every battle he initiates against someone who is covered by my presence and who keeps turning toward me under pressure, that trajectory runs consistently against him. He overreaches, he miscalculates, he does not fully understand the effect of pressure on a person who is genuinely mine, because the effect is often the opposite of what he intended. There is a contrast I want you to hold in your mind as a permanent frame for understanding your situation. On one side, the visible, everything you can see, measure, feel, and be troubled by, the specific problems, the specific relationships that are strained, the specific uncertainties that have not resolved. These are real. I am not asking you to pretend they are not real, or to manufacture a performance of peace that is disconnected from honest acknowledgement of what you are actually experiencing. They exist, and they matter, and I see them with complete clarity. On the other side, the invisible, the entire dimension of reality that your physical senses have no access to, but that is no less real for being unseen. The shield, the walls, the advanced guard of my presence in every space you are about to enter, the strategic work being done on your behalf in dimensions you cannot see, the prayers of others whose intercession has been added to your covering without your knowledge, the favor already moving ahead of you towards situations that have not yet opened, the purposes being worked through the very difficulties that have felt most oppressive, in ways that will be visible to you only from the other side of this season. Both dimensions are real, but they are not equal in ultimate power. What is visible to you is temporary. It operates in the time-space domain where things change, where situations shift, where what looks fixed today is different tomorrow. What is invisible, my protection, my purposes, my power, my love for you, these operate in the domain of the eternal and the sovereign. And eternal and sovereign always outlast the temporary and the circumstantial. This is the truth. The adversary needs you to forget that the most real things about your situation are not the things you can currently see. Now I want to unfold for you the complete picture of the armor, piece by piece, because each element represents a specific form of protection that I have built into your identity as my child, not as equipment you put on externally, but as realities you inhabit from the inside. The belt of truth is the first thing you secure, and this is not accidental. Truth is structural. It is the framework around which all other protection organizes itself. When your thinking is grounded in the truth of who I am, in the truth of what I have declared about you, in the truth of what I have promised and what those promises cost to make, the entire system of your protection functions with coherence and integrity. Truth is the load-bearing element. Everything else depends on it. When truth is absent, when your mind is operating from distorted premises, from misunderstandings of my character, from beliefs about yourself that contradict what I have said about you, the rest of the armor loses its structural integrity. The pieces are still present, but they do not hold together in the way they were designed to. And this is precisely why the adversary's foundational and relentless strategy is always deception, not dramatic, obvious lying, but the quiet, patient, sophisticated corruption of truth, the subtle replacement of what is real with something that merely resembles it while carrying a different essential nature. The shoes of peace on your feet carry more significance than they are usually given. They determine not only where you walk, but how you walk in every space you enter. Someone whose feet are established in the peace I give, the kind that transcends the capacity of circumstance to either produce or remove, walks through conflict without being consumed by it. They enter tense and hostile spaces without absorbing the hostility of those spaces into themselves. They can stand in an environment that is genuinely difficult and genuinely pressured, and maintain an internal stability that does not come from the absence of awareness about the difficulty, but from the presence of a peace that is independent of circumstance. This peace is not a pleasant feeling I provide as a reward when external conditions are favorable. It is a foundation solid and immovable that I establish under your feet, so that you can walk through unfavorable external conditions without losing your footing. The sword of my word is the only explicitly offensive weapon in the full complement of armor. Every other piece is protection. This one is designed for advance. When you speak what I have said into the situations of your life, not as a mechanical incantation, but as a genuine declaration of confidence in the one who spoke it, something moves in the unseen dimensions of your situation that would not move otherwise. The word that built the world does not lose its power when it is spoken into your circumstances. When you face lack and declare that I am your provider. When you face sickness and declare that I am your healer. When you face fear and declare that you are covered and protected by the living God, you are wielding the weapon that has never once failed in all of its applications across all of history. Prayer is the activity that holds all of this in place and keeps it functioning, not as a ritual that earns spiritual currency, not as a performance that demonstrates adequate commitment. Prayer is the ongoing conversation that keeps you aware of my presence, that keeps you positioned as someone who is actively in relationship with the one who is there covering, rather than someone who has been equipped and then left to function independently. It is the practice of staying close enough to me that you can hear when I am already moving, that you can align your awareness with what I am doing, rather than constantly trying to calculate what needs to happen next. The posture I want to speak about now is the one do not hold together in the way they were designed to. And this is precisely why the adversary's foundational and relentless strategy is always deception. Not dramatic, obvious lying, but the quiet, patient, sophisticated corruption of truth. The subtle replacement of what is real with something that merely resembles it, while carrying a different essential nature. The shoes of peace on your feet carry more significance than they are usually given. They determine not only where you walk, but how you walk in every space you enter. Someone whose feet are established in the peace I give, the kind that transcends the capacity of circumstance to either produce or remove, walks through conflict without being consumed by it. They enter tense and hostile spaces without absorbing the hostility of those spaces into themselves. They can stand in an environment that is genuinely difficult and genuinely pressured, and maintain an internal stability that does not come from the absence of awareness about the difficulty, but from the presence of a peace that is independent of circumstance. This peace is not a pleasant feeling I provide as a reward when external conditions are favorable. It is a foundation solid and immovable that I establish under your feet, so that you can walk through unfavorable external conditions without losing your footing. The sword of my word is the only explicitly offensive weapon in the full complement of armor. Every other piece is protection. This one is designed for advance. When you speak what I have said into the situations of your life, not as a mechanical incantation, but as a genuine declaration of confidence in the one who spoke it, something moves in the unseen dimensions of your situation that would not move otherwise. The word that built the world does not lose its power when it is spoken into your circumstances. When you face lack and declare that I am your provider, when you face sickness and declare that I am your healer, when you face fear and declare that you are covered and protected by the living God, you are wielding the weapon that has never once failed in all of its applications across all of history. Prayer is the activity that holds all of this in place and keeps it functioning, not as a ritual that earns spiritual currency, not as a performance that demonstrates adequate commitment. Prayer is the ongoing conversation that keeps you aware of my presence, that keeps you positioned as someone who is actively in relationship with the one who is there covering, rather than someone who has been equipped and then left to function independently. It is the practice of staying close enough to me that you can hear when I am already moving, that you can align your awareness with what I am doing, rather than constantly trying to calculate what needs to happen next. The posture I want to speak about now is the one full armor is designed to facilitate standing firm, not advancing dramatically, not retreating in defeat, standing the specific, demanding, underrated act of refusing to be moved from the position in which I have placed you. There are absolutely seasons in your life that call for bold, forward movement, for courageous steps into uncharted territory, for the kind of aggressive pursuit of what I have placed in your heart that requires everything you have. But there are also seasons, and this is one of them, that call for a different kind of courage. The courage to absorb pressure without being displaced by it. The courage to look at circumstances that have not changed and refuse to allow their unchanged state to change your settled conviction about what I have promised. Standing sounds simpler than advancing. It is not. Advancing has momentum. Standing has only the conviction of the one who refuses to move. It requires a particular kind of spiritual stubbornness. Not the stubbornness of ego, or the inflexibility of someone who cannot receive correction, but the stubbornness of someone who has examined my track record with the world, and with themselves specifically, and who has come to a settled conclusion that my word is more reliable than any accumulation of contrary experience, and who will not be talked out of that conclusion by any amount of pressure, any length of waiting, or any evidence that seems to contradict it. Standing in my strength means that the stability you demonstrate in this season is not a product of your own reserves. It does not come from an exceptional personal capacity for difficulty, or from spiritual fortitude that you have developed through years of disciplined formation. It comes from drawing continuously on my strength, from recognizing that your assignment is not to be strong enough, smart enough, or spiritually developed enough to handle everything that comes at you. Your assignment is to remain connected to the one who has all of those qualities in unlimited supply, and who makes them available to you precisely in the moments when your own supply has run out. There is something underneath all of this that I want you to feel, not just understand, not doctrine, not theology, something that touches the actual lived reality of your daily existence. I care about what happens to you not in a general category level way, not as one instance of a class called human beings under my care. I care about what happens specifically to you in your specific life, with your specific concerns, and your specific vulnerabilities, and your specific joys, and your specific fears. I know your name, I know your history. I knew before you were born what kind of person you would be, what difficulties your particular temperament and life circumstances would generate, what specific forms of pressure would prove most challenging for you, what the particular texture of your daily fear feels like. I'm not sure what text you'd like me to say. Could you provide the specific text you'd like me to read aloud? All of this, in advance with perfect completeness and total clarity. I chose you. It covered you. I built the fortress around your specific life, sized and shaped to protect exactly the kind of person you are against exactly the kinds of threats you face. The adversary would have you believe that my protection fluctuates with your spiritual performance, that it is robust and reliable when you are doing well, and thin and conditional when you are not. This is one of the most strategically damaging lies he tells, because it ties your sense of security to the most unreliable possible foundation, your own daily consistency. And you know more honestly than anyone else knows how inconsistent you can be. So if your covering truly depended on your consistency, you would have genuine cause for ongoing anxiety. But it does not. The foundation of your covering is my character, not your performance. My faithfulness, which is what your protection rests upon, does not fluctuate. It does not have stronger days and weaker ones. It does not respond to the quality of your recent spiritual life by increasing or decreasing the level of covering it provides. It is constant. It is the same across every moment of your existence, from the moments of your greatest clarity and obedience to the moments of your deepest failure and most confused doubt. The shield over your life in your weakest moment is the same shield that covers you in your strongest, because it is held in place by my faithfulness and not by yours. What I am building in you through this season of sustained pressure is not simply the capacity to endure difficult things. I am building something more specific and more valuable than mere endurance. I am building settled confidence, the kind that does not need favorable circumstances to be operational, that does not require things to look promising in order to function, that does not depend on any external signal to activate. Settled confidence knows what it knows about who I am and what I have promised. and it holds that knowledge as the most reliable frame for interpreting everything that happens, regardless of what that everything looks like in the moment it arrives. Settled confidence changes the way you inhabit difficulty. It allows you to face hard things without being terrorized by them, to acknowledge reality without being defined by it, to name what is difficult without concluding that what is difficult is therefore permanent, to engage with the problems of your life without being consumed by them. The person who walks in settled confidence is not unrealistic. They are not pretending that things are fine when things are not fine. They are operating from a deeper layer of reality and the surface layer of current circumstances. They are standing in the knowledge that what I am doing in their life is real and active and purposeful, even when nothing visible confirms it. I want to place on everything I have spoken to you today is this: the protection over your life is not a defensive posture that was designed to keep you small and safe and stationary. A fortress is not just a hiding place, it is a base of operations. It is a position of strength from which advance is not only possible, but intended. The person who knows they are covered moves differently than the person who is uncertain about their protection. They take territory because they know who goes before them into that territory. They engage with difficult assignments because they know who stands at their back. They face the people and situations that have intimidated them because they know who stands in the space between them and everything that threatens. You are not covered so that you could spend your life behind walls, waiting for safety to arrive from the outside. You were covered so that you could advance from a position of security into every space and assignment and relationship and challenge that I placed before you. The armor was given to people who were going somewhere, people who had a direction, a calling, a purpose that required them to move into territory that had not yet been yielded, to occupy ground that the adversary was not willing to surrender without a fight. That describes you. You have not been placed here to wait. You have been placed here to advance, not recklessly, not independently of my leading, but boldly and with the confidence of someone who knows that the wall of fire goes before them wherever they go. Everything that is behind you has been protected so that you could arrive here. Everything that is around you now is under my active coverage, and everything that is ahead of you, the assignments that have not yet opened, the doors that have not yet swung wide, the relationships that will carry significance. You cannot yet anticipate the seasons that will require of you things you have not yet developed. All of it falls under the same covering. I do not change at the boundary of your current season. My protection does not diminish as the challenges increase. If anything, as the stakes rise and the adversary increases his pressure because of what is approaching for you, my covering adjusts to match. The fortress walls do not thin under heavy assault, they hold. Your family is protected. Your home carries my mark upon its threshold. The work your hands reach toward is under my favor. The plans that were assembled against your peace and your future, everything is under my active covering. Your progress is being undone by a force the adversary has no answer for. The weapons that were aimed at your future are failing at this moment in ways you will only understand when you look back at this season from the other side. Nothing formed against you shall prosper. This is not a wish articulated as a statement of hope. It is not an aspiration dressed in declarative language. It is the fixed and eternal word of the one who has never once spoken a promise that was not kept. In all of eternity, in all of creation, in all of history, across all the lives of all the people who ever put their trust in me, receive it not as a concept, but as a reality. Stand in it today, in whatever you are facing, as someone who knows that the fortress they stand in has never been taken. You are covered, you are held, you are safe. Not in the sense that your life will be without challenge or pain or difficulty, but safe in the ultimate sense, the sense that matters most, the sense that the adversary cannot touch. You are in my hands, and nothing takes you out of my hands. Nothing has that authority, nothing possesses that power. And from within my hands, you are free to live fully, to love generously, to advance boldly, to serve faithfully, and to trust completely, all the way to the end of the story I am writing with your life, which ends not in defeat, but in the fullness of everything I prepared for you before the foundations of the world were laid. Let me take you into a deeper place of understanding now, because I want you to carry more than general encouragement out of this conversation. I want you to carry something structural, a way of thinking about protection that reshapes how you process every difficult situation that comes against you from this point forward. The error that causes so much unnecessary suffering in the lives of people who genuinely belong to me is this. They evaluate my protection by whether the attack arrives, rather than by whether the attack succeeds. They expect that because they walk under my covering, nothing will be aimed at them. And so when something is aimed at them, when the difficulty appears, when the opposition rises, when the pressure begins, they experience not only the pressure itself, but also the secondary wound of feeling as though my covering must have failed, as though something has slipped through that should not have been able to reach them. This secondary wound is often more damaging than the primary one, because it strikes at the most foundational level of trust. So I want to clarify something that is essential. My promise was never that nothing would be aimed at you. The promise was that nothing aimed at you shall ultimately prosper. May fly the plan, may be launched, the opposition may rise with apparent force and initial momentum. What my protection guarantees is not the absence of the attack, it is the outcome of the attack. Nothing that was formed against you will prosper in its design. Nothing that was aimed at your destruction will complete its intended purpose. The attack arrives, the attack fails. This is the consistent pattern in the life of someone covered by my hand, and understanding this pattern changes everything about how you interpret difficulty when it appears. When the attack arrives, it does not mean the covering has been lifted. It means the covering is about to be demonstrated. When the weapon is raised, it does not mean the breastplate has failed. It means the breastplate is about to absorb exactly what it was designed to absorb. When the pressure increases to a level that feels unsustainable, it does not mean my strength has been stretched past its limit. It means my strength is about to become visible to you in a way that would not have been visible without the pressure that required it. The attack is not evidence of abandonment. The attack is the occasion for display. The display of what I am capable of in the life of someone who stays, who trusts, who refuses to run, and who does not let the arrival of the attack convince them that the defender has left the field. Consider what David knew when he stood before Goliath. He was not unaware of the size of the giant. He was not pretending that the threat was smaller than it appeared. He looked at the giant with clear eyes and saw exactly what was there: an enormous, experienced, heavily armed warrior who had already produced paralyzing fear in an entire trained army. David did not minimize this. What David possessed that the others did not was not superior personal courage or exceptional individual fighting ability. What David possessed was a different frame, a way of seeing the situation that included information the others were not working with. He knew who went with him into the valley. He knew whose name he carried into the confrontation. He knew that the giant was large, but that the covering over his life was larger. That between him and Goliath stood a reality that the giant could not see, and that the observers in the camp could not see, but that David had spent enough time in the presence of to be absolutely certain of. That is the frame I am giving you, not a denial of the size of what you face, a true accounting of what stands between you and it. There is a specific kind of peace I want to produce in you through what I am speaking today. Not the peace of resolved circumstances, but the peace of established identity. Resolved circumstances produce a conditional peace, lasts only as long as the resolution holds. The moment new circumstances arise, the moment the next difficulty appears on the horizon, that kind of peace evaporates, because it was built on the circumstance and not on the one who is sovereign over all circumstances. What I am building in you is a different foundation, peace that is established in who you are to me and who I am to you. A peace that does not require circumstances to cooperate with it in order to remain functional. The peace that I give is guarding your heart and your mind right now, not a future operation, a present one. Even as you have been listening, even as you have been reading these words, even in the midst of whatever you were carrying when you came to this moment, something has been settling in you. A quieting, a slowing of the internal noise, a sense that the most frightening things are perhaps not as absolute as they seemed before you began. This is not your emotional system managing its own anxiety. This is my peace, active, intelligent, present, functioning exactly as it was designed to function. As a guard that stands at the entrance of your heart and your mind and decides what is allowed to enter and what must wait outside. Let me speak about the glory that covers you. This is not a metaphor for something vague and atmospheric. The glory of my presence is a substantive reality, a specific quality of divine covering that operates in a different register than anything the natural world can produce or the adversary can mimic. When my glory rests on a person, it does something to the spiritual environment around them. It shifts the weight of what is possible. It alters what the adversary can and cannot do within the territory of that person's life. Throughout human history, the places where my glory has been most tangibly present have been the places where the impossible has happened, where water has become a road, where fires have refused to burn what should have burned, where chains have fallen off and doors have opened without hands to open them, where the mathematics of survival have been repeatedly overruled by a provision that operated according to a different arithmetic entirely. That same glory, not a diminished version, not a quantity rationed out in smaller portions to accommodate the vastness of history, covers you. The covering is not thinner because it extends to many people. My glory does not divide when it spreads, it multiplies. What rests on you is the full weight of my presence, the complete authority of my name, the undiminished power of the one who has never once encountered a situation that exceeded his capacity to address it. The armor of my glory over your life has a specific function in the spiritual realm that I want you to understand. The adversary approaches the perimeter of what I have built around you and encounters my glory. He does not experience it as a neutral barrier. He must find a way around. He experiences it as a force that his own darkness cannot exist in proximity to. Darkness does not compete with light. It retreats from it. The adversary does not negotiate terms with the covering of my glory. He withdraws because the nature of my presence is incompatible with his continued operation in the space it occupies. This is the foundation of the spiritual authority you exercise when you speak my name into a situation, when you pray in the authority of what was accomplished for you, when you declare into darkness the light of what I have said. The helmet on your mind has one job above all others in this season: to preserve your picture of who I am. Because everything the adversary does, every strategy, every whisper, every coordinated pressure campaign is ultimately aimed at corrupting your image of me, not at getting you to deny my existence, but at getting you to believe a smaller, less capable, less faithful, less actively engaged version of me. A God who is generally good, but sometimes distracted. A God who is powerful in principle, but sometimes limited in practice. A God whose love for you is real, but whose resources for your specific situation may have been stretched thin by the scope of everything else demanding his attention. A God who cares, but who cannot always be counted on to come through in the specific way that your specific need requires. Every one of those corrupted images of me, once accepted, functions as a crack in the fortress, not because my fortress actually develops cracks in response to your belief, but because the crack in your image of me changes your behavior, and changed behavior can move you out from under a covering that has not moved. When you stop praying because you have concluded that prayer is not reliably effective in your case specifically, you have not changed what I am capable of, but you have changed your posture in relation to it. When you stop declaring my promises because you have become uncertain whether they truly apply to your situation, you have not changed what is declared, but you have changed your relationship to what is declared. The fortress remains, but the person inside the fortress has wandered toward the wall and is no longer standing in the center of the covering. The helmet keeps you in the center. It guards your picture of me against the sophisticated, patient, relentless campaign the adversary wages against it. It preserves the image of a God who is vast, who is faithful, who is actively present in the details of your life, who has no shortage of resource or attention or power, and who has never once abandoned a single person who was truly his. When that picture is clear and intact, you stand in the center of the fortress with confidence. When it is clouded, you drift toward the edges without noticing, and the covering feels further away. Not because it has moved, but because your perception of where you are in relation to it has been distorted. Now I want to speak about the specific experience of waiting, because the shield of protection does not only function in active crisis, it functions in the waiting that happens between the promise and the fulfillment. In the quiet of a season where nothing appears to be moving, and where the very stillness of the situation can become its own kind of attack. Waiting is where many people lose the most ground. Not in the acute battles that require everything they have, and where the stakes are so obvious that they summon their deepest resources. In the chronic waiting, the long, quiet, apparently uneventful seasons where the promise has not yet arrived, and the pressure is not dramatic, but the silence is heavy, and the days accumulate without visible progress. The adversary uses waiting strategically. He knows that the human heart was designed for resolution, and finds sustained unresolution deeply difficult to carry. He knows that every day a promise remains unfulfilled is a day in which he can plant a seed of doubt. He knows that extended waiting corrodes the confidence of people who have not learned to find their stability in something other than the forward movement of their circumstances. And so he orchestrates delay wherever he can. Not because he has the power to prevent what I have promised, but because he knows that the character of your trust is often determined not by how you respond in the crisis, but by how you hold on in the long, quiet stretch before the resolution. My covering does not thin during seasons of waiting. The fortress walls do not become permeable because you are in a period of apparent stillness. What changes during waiting? What must change if waiting is going to produce in you what I intended to produce, rather than what the adversary hopes it will produce, is your understanding of what is happening in the invisible. Waiting is not an action on my part. It is preparation. It is the work of building something in you that was not yet present and that could not have been built any other way. It is the slow, patient, often invisible process of aligning every element, internal and external, with the fullness of what I intend for you. The promise is not delayed because I have forgotten. The promise is being prepared, and so are you. Every day of waiting that you navigate in trust, every day that you hold to what I have said without the support of visible evidence, is a day in which something structural is being built in you that will be essential to your ability to carry what is coming. The breakthrough that arrives to a person who has waited well, who has held their trust through sustained unresolution, who has allowed the waiting to form something in them, rather than destroy something. That breakthrough lands differently than one that comes quickly and easily. It lands in a person who has been formed by the waiting, into someone capable of stewarding what has arrived, someone whose trust has been proven not in easy conditions, but in difficult ones, someone whose character has been tested and found to hold under the specific pressures that the promise will generate once it is fulfilled. The protection over your life includes protection of the timing of your promises. I am not exposing you to the fulfillment of something you are not yet equipped to carry. The waiting is not arbitrary. It is precisely calibrated. Every element of what is coming requires a corresponding element of who you are becoming. And my covering over your life includes the wisdom to know exactly when the alignment is complete enough for the door to open. Not when it is perfect, not when you have achieved some ideal state of readiness, but when the essential work of this season has done what it was assigned to do in the interior of who you are. Walk into the days ahead with this in your mind and settled in your spirit. The shield is yours. The armor is fitted specifically to you. The fortress was built with your life in mind. The wall of fire that goes before you has never failed to clear the ground ahead of someone walking in my purpose. And you, chosen vessel, set apart, covered from above and below, guarded at every angle, protected in every domain of your existence. You are walking into a season where everything I have been building in you and around you is about to become visible in ways it has not been visible before. The attacks will not stop. The adversary does not retire because he is losing, but the attacks will fail one by one, category by category. in every area of your life where He has placed His concentrated effort. What was assembled against your peace will fall apart. What was constructed to limit your future will be dismantled. What was aimed at your family will miss its target. What was designed to break your ability to trust will have the opposite effect. It will forge in you a trust so tempered by fire that nothing will be able to challenge it again with the same effectiveness. There is something I want to speak directly into, one of the most common ways the adversary damages the experience of protection without actually breaching it. He cannot remove the covering I have placed over you, so instead he tries to make you feel as though the covering has been removed. He tries to engineer experiences of spiritual loneliness, of distance, of silence, that feel like abandonment, even when abandonment has not occurred. He knows that the felt sense of my presence is not always identical to the actual reality of my presence. He knows that emotions respond to circumstances in ways that do not always accurately reflect spiritual truth. And so, he will orchestrate circumstances that produce the feeling of being uncovered, while the covering remains entirely intact. There have been moments in your life when you could not feel me, when prayer felt like words going nowhere, when worship felt mechanical rather than connecting, when the sense of my nearness that you have known in other seasons seemed inexplicably absent. These moments are real in their emotional texture. I am not dismissing what you experienced, but I need you to understand their actual spiritual meaning, which is different from what the adversary wants you to conclude from them. Those seasons of silence were not seasons of absence. They were seasons in which I was requiring you to trust the reality of my presence, rather than your emotional confirmation of it. To hold to what you know, rather than what you feel. To stand on the fact of my covenant with you, rather than on the feeling of my nearness in a given moment. The covering does not lift when you cannot feel it. The fortress does not become permeable when prayer feels dry. The shield does not develop gaps when your faith feels weak. My faithfulness is not dependent on your ability to perceive it. And the seasons when you trusted me without the emotional confirmation, when you stayed, when you continued, when you refused to draw the conclusion of abandonment, despite the absence of felt evidence to the contrary. Those seasons built something in your trust that the seasons of felt presence could not build. They proved something about the nature of your relationship with me. They demonstrated that your trust was not merely a response to pleasant experience, but a settled conviction about who I am that persisted even when experience was not cooperating. The wall of fire around your life is real, regardless of the quality of your current spiritual experience. The breastplate over your heart is functioning, regardless of whether you can feel its weight. The shield is absorbing arrows that you are not even aware are being fired, because I am defending you at a level that is entirely beyond your ability to monitor. Most of the protection I provide in your life is invisible, not just because it operates in the spiritual realm, but because so much of it operates in the layer between the threat being formed and the threat reaching you, so early in the adversary's planning process that by the time you would notice anything, the plan has already been dismantled. This is why trust must be more than emotional. It must be settled in the will, a choice you make independently of how you feel, a decision you hold regardless of the texture of your current experience, a conviction you carry not because everything in your life is confirming it, but because you have examined who I am and who I have been throughout all of history and throughout your own personal story, and you have concluded that this is the most reliable ground to build your life on. That kind of trust, chosen, deliberate, sustained across seasons of both felt presence and felt silence, is the kind the adversary cannot defeat. He can affect your feelings. He cannot touch the will of someone who has decided. Decide today in the midst of whatever you are carrying, whatever pressures are active, whatever questions remain open and unresolved. Decide that the covering is real, that the fortress holds, that the one who placed the shield in your life has not moved from his position between you and everything that threatens you. Let that decision be the word you speak back to fear the next time it knocks. Let it be the anchor you drop in the next storm. Let it be the foundation you stand on when the ground of your circumstances feels unsteady beneath your feet. I want to speak to you about the way this protection expresses itself in the ordinary rhythms of your daily life. Because you do not live your life only in moments of acute spiritual crisis. Most of your life is lived in the ordinary, in the routines of a regular day, in the decisions that seem too small to warrant prayer, in the interactions that feel unremarkable, in the movement through a sequence of hours that will never make it into anyone's testimony because nothing dramatic occurred in them. The adversary understands this, and he works within the ordinary as much as he works within the dramatic. Many of his most effective strategies are deployed not in the moments that obviously feel like spiritual warfare, but in the accumulated weight of ordinary difficult days. My covering extends into every ordinary moment. It is not reserved for emergencies or for the situations in your life that are obviously significant in a spiritual sense. My protection is active when you are in a conversation that suddenly turns tense and difficult, guarding your tongue and your perception in real time. It is active when you are making a decision that seems minor, but that will prove more consequential than it appeared. It is active when you are tired and your defenses are lower, and the adversary typically finds his easiest access to the interior of your thought life. It is active in the physical, in the body you inhabit, in the health of the systems that sustain your daily function, in the cellular level of an existence that I knit together and that I sustain with a continuing creative care. Nothing about your life is too small for my attention, and nothing about your life falls outside the perimeter of my covering. The parts of your existence you consider too mundane to bring to me in prayer are not too mundane. For me to be present in the God who counted the hairs on your head is not uninterested in the ordinary details of your life. He is involved in them, not managing them with anxious microcontrol, but present in them with the relaxed authority of someone who has everything in hand and who is not surprised by anything that emerges. The shield that covers you in the major battles of your life is the same shield that covers you when you are sitting quietly, going about your day, not feeling embattled at all. The covering is not intermittent. It does not come and go with the level of felt spiritual intensity in your experience. It is continuous, consistent, unbroken. And this means that your life, all of it, from the most spiritually heightened moments to the most ordinary, is being lived under the constant, watchful, active care of the one who declared himself your protector and who has never once stepped away from that declaration. There is a word I want to leave with you that sums up everything I have been building toward in this conversation. The word is established. To be established is more than to be temporarily stabilized. It is more than to be momentarily reassured or briefly comforted. To be established is to be settled in something that will not shift, to have your footing on ground that does not move when the weather changes, to have your identity and your security anchored in something so foundational that no circumstance of life can dislodge it. I am establishing you, not just protecting you in the moment, but building into you a security that becomes structural to who you are, a protection that moves from something you receive externally to something that functions from the inside, woven into the way you think, the way you respond to threat, the way you interpret difficulty, the way you understand your own place in my purposes. A person who has been established in the knowledge of my covering does not merely survive difficult seasons. They grow through them. They come out of pressure more formed, more clear, more deeply rooted in what they know than they were when they entered. The very things that the adversary intends to use to weaken you are being used by me to strengthen the roots of your trust, so that what is built in you during this season becomes the foundation for everything I intend to build through you in the season ahead. You are established, you are covered, you are held in the hands of the God who builds what cannot be shaken, and who protects what he has chosen with the full weight of his eternal and undefeatable authority. The shield over your life today is the same shield that will be over your life in every tomorrow that follows this one. Every transition you navigate, every new chapter that opens after this one closes, the covering moves with you. It does not stay behind when you advance. It does not wait for you at a previous address. When you are called forward into new territory, wherever I call you, the shield of my protection goes ahead of you and settles there before your foot arrives. Wherever I lead you, the fortress of my presence is already established in the space before you enter it. This is who I am for you. This is what you carry into every single day of the life I have given you. Not a vague hope that things will somehow work out, but the settled and specific knowledge that you are covered, established, and held by the one whose power has no ceiling, and whose love for you has no condition and no end. Nothing formed against you shall prosper. Stand in it. Live from it. Let it be the sentence you return to every time pressure tries to tell you a different story about who you are, what covers you, and what the outcome of your life will be. Let it be the declaration you speak out loud when the adversary whispers the opposite. Let it be the foundation under your feet when everything else feels uncertain. Let it be because it is true, and because the one who said it has never spoken a word that did not stand. Amen. If this message touched your heart today, take a moment right now to share it with someone who needs to be reminded that they are covered and protected under the shield of God's love. Type Amen in the comments below to receive this blessing over your life and over everyone you love. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, subscribe now so you never miss a message that God may have prepared specifically for this moment in your journey. You are not here by accident. Every word spoken in this message was chosen for you. Come back whenever fear tries to convince you that you are exposed and unprotected. Let this message remind you of the fortress that surrounds you, the armor that covers you, and the God who never stops standing between you and everything that would try to reach you.